Hey Sofa Squad, so today I want to talk about some things that have taken place recently in the Orrin and Orson West case. Now, these things are going to revolve around interviews and statements by both the mayor and the adoptive grandmother. And so that's it. Let's go ahead and jump on into it. Now, what I want to talk about first is the grandmother's letter that she wrote. She recently penned a letter. There's a link to the letter in the description box if you want to read the whole thing. In this, she's just crying out for, help basically for these two boys. She is begging them to come back home, or for them to be brought back home, I should say. Whoever has information to come forward. And she's talking about the agony that, their missing has caused. Now, one thing that I do like about this letter is, again, it's the assumption and the hopes and prayers that the boys are still alive and they're still out there. And I feel like that's the general consensus and vibe that I see everywhere, is that, they're out there and they're going to come home, which I just think that that's really good to put that energy out there. Now, one thing about the letter that I thought was interesting, and this could be just like a mistake in writing, I guess you could say, but at one point in the letter, the grandmother says, "Less than 18 hours after their disappearance, we made the heart-wrenching choice to place their 4 brothers, my other babies, in the hands of the FBI for their protection. We had no clue what was happening or who was out there, and in an instant, all 6 of my grandchildren were gone, out of my reach. I was shocked, hurt, worried, upset, and confused." Now, that sounds absolutely horrible, and I think it's interesting that, obviously we don't know what's going on behind the scenes with the investigation and all that, but, this whole thing of like this, subversive persons that possibly have these boys, it just seems so eerie, if you will. Now, one thing that was interesting about that statement is that Emma Gallegos, there's a link to her article down below as well. She's a reporter. She talked to the FBI and they confirmed that they're like, look, we don't take kids into custody, And when Emma wanted to talk to CPS, they were like, look, you know what, we can't talk about active cases or whatever. So I don't know if the grandmother just kind of, meant to say CPS or whatever, but it's just a little bit, awkward, I guess you could say, that whole little thing right there. But regardless, whatever has happened to them wherever they are, my heart aches for all those who care and love about these. Now, one thing that all of this does is it keeps just piling up questions, on top of questions on top of questions. And so a young lady who has been reporting on this case from the get-go and following it, she sat down for a question and answer herself recently, and I thought this was really interesting. Now, this is Perla Shaheen, and again, I'm going to put a link down in the description box below if you want to read the whole, interview or whatever you want to call it, but I'm going to just talk about a few of the questions that she answered and go over my thoughts on those. Now, this one question I thought was really interesting, and when she was asked, why haven't updated photos of the boys been put out there? And I was like, hey man, I can't read the answer to this fast enough. Now, she would say that the last time she talked to the California City Police Chief, John Walker, he said, you know what, yeah, we went through Giselle and Jacqueline's phones, the FBI did, and, since they have gotten new phones. Now, Perla says, you know what, she does know that, yeah, there were pictures of the boys on Giselle and Jacqueline's phones. Perla's like, I can't say why Bakersfield or California City have not released the photos. Now, she says that she thinks it's because, that's personal property of Jacqueline and Trizel's, and so they can't release that stuff to the public. Now, Perla also did say that she talked to the biological cousin of the boys, Rosanna Wills, and Rosanna's like, look, I'm working on getting some photos digitally aged, to represent what the boys would look like now. Now, here's my thing with that whole thing right there. Okay, I'm just like, okay, I can get maybe why it's like, okay, well, we can't release those photos or whatever. And again, I know I don't know all the behind the scenes stuff. Nobody does except a few people. And mostly the police, I would imagine at this point. But I'm just like, why is the cousin having to go to those links? I mean, my God, if it would help find the boys, you would think someone with photos, whether it's the police, Jacqueline, any of those people, would be like, no, please put these out there so everyone knows what they look like recently. to have to go to those lengths to do the digital aging thing, I'm just like, really? You know, okay. Now the question we all love to ask was asked to her, you know, do the police have any suspects? You know, she's like, anyone and everyone. So, you know, it stays the same with that. Now she also said, you know what, they can't really confirm anything, but they have said they are making case development behind the scenes. So, you know, okay, that's hopeful. You know, and I feel that same way too, where I'm like, I know that they have to know more than they're letting on. I get that. I'm, you know, go for it. So it just feels frustrating, obviously, at times, because it just feels like it's stalled out on our end. But, you know, I would rather it be that way and to bring the boys home and justice or whatever it is needs to happen to whoever did this to the boys before I put my personal, you know, nosiness wanting to find out like what happened ahead of that. Now, another thing that I thought was interesting that she cleared up is she was asked, you know, okay, where did the adoptive parents work last year? Now she would say, you know what, I couldn't really find anything on Jacqueline, but yeah, when it came to Giselle though, she was like, look, you know, through my research and, you know, my little digging through my stuff, she says that it looks like Giselle worked for Summer Breeze Ice Cream Company. Now, another major question, who saw the boys last? You know, and she was like, look, as far as we know, it's the grandmother. Another question I thought was interesting was when she was asked, what does the Bakersfield Police Department think about the neighbor's video? You know, and she was like, look, they're basically saying that that video matches up with Giselle's alibi. Now, the huge question that was asked, and I was like, oh, we can't rip to this one, is she was asked, okay, look, were the children willingly handed over to CPS as the West family stated in this letter, or were they taken? Now, she said, look, you know what, we only go by facts that we hear from law enforcement. And so she was like, you know, from the get-go in this scenario, you know, she has been told by the police chief, by John, he stated that in a scenario like this, what ends up happening is the rest of those children are taken into protective custody. Now, that eventually leads to foster care, and that is where the children will stay until, like, whatever happens with this, whatever court cases go through the system, whatever takes place, until Giselle and Jacqueline are legally allowed to take those children back. You know, but until then, there's that. So that's where it's kind of interesting of, you know, the statement from the grandmother saying that kind of contradicts, you know, what the law enforcement is saying. Now, Mayor Kern also released a statement, and this was a video message. This is obviously in regards to the boys in the search. Now, she says, you know what, these boys have touched my heart just as well as they have this community, and these boys are the top priority. She's like, I have made sure of this. I believe that from what I have seen. No resources being spared. And I mean, this is the kind of stuff that the public wants to see for something like this. We like this reassurance of, look, we are throwing everything we can at this case to get to the bottom of it. Now, she does also say, look, you know what? Full transparency here, there's going to be things that y'all don't know to preserve the investigation, and that's just how it is. And you know, obviously this is frustrating. I just talked about it. You know, I want to know. You know, I mean, we all do, but it is what it is. And so I do still feel like, you know what, this is in good hands. It's with BPD. They're doing all they can, and I like getting these updates from them and this transparency. You know, it keeps everyone going. It keeps the boys' conversation in the public eye, and the ultimate question of where are they and how do we bring them back home. Now, as I said before, there's going to be links down in the description box if you want to read some of these things in full. There's also a phone number down below for the Kern secret witness phone number. You can call that number, and you know, if you have any information obviously about the little boys, that would help to bring them back home. I really appreciate everybody watching, everyone following this. If you want to see more of my stuff, just click the videos and the stuff that's popping up, and until next time, I'll see you then.